Welcome to Deleted Saves. On this episode, Doki Doki Literature Club on PS5. What is love? What is life? What is a simulation? What happens when an artificial intelligence, or something supernatural, subverts this expectation? And is there any point to life itself? Let's get into yet another game I am very late to the party on. 2017's Doki Doki Literature Club. Due to the nature of this game, and of this review, I feel I need to start with a joke. Or more precisely, I need to describe a joke to you, dear listener. I know. The worst thing in comedy one could do is explain the joke. But since this joke is a visual cartoon and I'm speaking to you in an auditory medium, you'll have to deal with it. A few months ago on social media, I saw this cartoon making the rounds. Credited creator Ball Buddy on Twitter, not X Elon, not X, in which a big goofy cartoon ogre, the kind you might expect to see as the liner art in the Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual, is sobbing uncontrollably while holding a copy of James Joyce's novel Ulysses. The caption around the crying cryptid reads as follows, quote, "Everyone call Ogre stupid, and it true! Ogre barely even literate. Ogre finally finished reading Ulysses, but Ogre can only identify surface-level themes like religion and nationalism, and can't comprehend deeper ideas like the remorse of conscience that makes James Joyce's novel a modernist classic. Ogre's so dumb, it make ogres sad." End quote. I feel that when we discuss games that have some sort of subversion of their ideas or an out-of-left-field reveal, it seems that hordes of badly trained pseudo-intellectuals poisoned by decades of American institutional learning begin to come out of the fucking woodwork, trying to overanalyze the topic at hand, looking for deeper themes, and how it lines up with whatever misbegotten and misunderstood bullshit has been shoved down our throats in bite-sized chunks, because we don't really have time for deeper pursuits under capitalism. No, don't get me wrong, I'm all for education and self-improvement. But not all education is the same, and the ravings of TikTok influencers or tech bro billionaires or religious nuts and whatever insane and dangerous shit they are spewing are absolutely not the same level of educational quality as a studied, rational thinker whose work has been peer-reviewed and time-tested, and more importantly, successfully and skeptically counterpointed by other recognized experts. But as I said, we, due to accident and careful construction, don't have time for that. Media literacy is dead, folks, and we killed it. The blood is on our hands, and we get more and more spaced out. We will never come off. Especially in games when, all too often, it ain't that deep. I brought this up before when I let the fetid air out of media darlings, but as a contrarian out of necessity, I know that when no one wishes to listen to someone take a deserved shit on their closely held beliefs. Too bad, I'm here to do it again. I did understand the homework assignment, folks. I just refused. What does this have to do with a silly, light and airy romance visual novel? Well, this is certainly not my genre of preferred game, but it is good to get out of one's comfort zones now and then and see how the other half lives. And on the surface, that is what Doki Doki Literature Club presents itself as. One of a billion or more shovelware romance visual novels. No actual gameplay, just a lot of text and anime cartoon girlies, obviously nowhere near the age of 18, but the developers have to put that lie out there lest they be rightfully destroyed by the FBI and every censorship board known to man. The developer in this case is Team Salvato, an American company using as many manga tropes as possible. And the version I played was technically the Doki Doki Literature Club Plus version, but it hardly matters. I didn't need the extras. By the end of the main plot, I was done anyway. The only other thing I did know about this game going into it is that this game is actually a psychological horror title, which came through the media discussions I had heard about in this game. The game itself alludes to this by saying up front that it is not for children or the easily disturbed. Personally, Resident Evil did that better too. The problem is that, at this point, the descriptor psychological horror could mean a lot of things, much of it neither truly psychological or all that horrifying. More likely just weird and somewhat uncomfortable. And that is what all I was expecting going in. You play someone who you never see, and it doesn't really matter who they are. It is assumed you are a male, as all the other characters are female. You are a high school student, the typical manga space case loser who has no ambitions and no personality beyond liking anime and video games, so the player can be more easily involved. You'll meet your longtime friend and neighbor, Sayori. Again, another trope of the goofball hypergirl but chronic oversleeper, who is looking for you to join her literature club at school because of how few people are in it, but also because she wants to spend more time with you. You don't actually get to say no, so instead you go and see the club is full of cute girls. I'd slap the taste out of this mouth of this little halfwit you play, but as it is supposed to be a dating sim after all, so. All of whom are some sort of anime harem flaws masquerading as a personality. Angry and immature Natsuki, tall and shy Yuri, and Monica, the club president. Sayori is also an option to date. There are no real choices in this game. That is part of the illusion of comfort. Most of this is text. In between class days at the club, you will write poems. And I say poems extremely loosely here. You will get to pick 20 random words from a list of things like lollipop, clouds, kitty, suicide, atonement, cry, or the like, which are all incongruous and should be the first clue that something is amiss. Depending on which words you pick, certain girls will like this drivel more than others. And the poems they write in return for you are really not that great. But it's not supposed to be good, and everyone admits it. This is how you are supposed to land your dream girl, by impressing her with your immature attempts at rewriting Walden, but edgy. It doesn't take long before the school festival comes up, and the player and the girls must do jobs to help get the word out about the club, like cupcake decorating or making signs. This is where the whole game goes sideways. So here's what I did. By the day before the festival, Sayori, who has been very cheerful, suddenly is quite sad, and she leaves the club meeting early. Monica decides to pair the player off with one of the other girls to help them out, but not Sayori, who she will be helping. I went with Yuri, and we were to meet at the player's house to make decorations. It is here that the player becomes worried about Sayori and goes next door to visit before Yuri arrives. Sayori is home and admits to the player a deep secret that she has been battling depression her whole life and is contemplating her suicide. The player, not knowing what to do but knowing a cute girl is coming, tries to do their best to comfort their friend, which makes sense as this is a child doing it. I'll get back to this point later. You go home to find Yuri waiting, and in the course of making decorations, Yuri reveals that she has a knife fetish, and it is heavily implied that she is a cutter, harming herself for pleasure or just to feel. So now two of the four girls have revealed themselves to having pretty bad mental health issues. But our player forges ahead with admitting that he and Yuri could be friends or could meet up again. And then Sayori shows up as Yuri is leaving. Sayori confesses she loves the player, and here is where the two endings get cemented. Whether you admit you love Sayori too, or that you just will be friends. Either way, and spoilers incoming for those out there who have not played this game, and trigger warning as well, even though I hate that term with every fiber of my being, this ends very badly. The next day, the player goes to see Sayori, as she has not come to school, and finds her dead in her house, having hung herself. It is at this point the character you play as quits out, and the game ends. Supposedly. From here, the game begins to quote-unquote glitch heavily, and it is being implied that the copy you have is broken. Oh boy, I've seen this trick before in games. Eternal Darkness, anyone? The game starts again as though Sayori never existed, and it is Monica herself who invites you to the club, although she really does not give you a choice. As the player begins to play the next few days, the game begins to devolve into reboots, broken JPEGs, incorrectly loaded fonts, and corrupted saves, none of which are an actual problem. The game is functioning normally. The same three girls are here, but they are acting irrationally and overdramatic. It gets revealed that Natsuki has an abusive father, and the club is her safe space. All right, that's 3 out of the 4. Here we go. At this point, it kind of doesn't matter who you pick to date, as the characters will spiral out of control into full mental breakdown. In my case, it was Yuri, who, more spoilers, does reveal she is a cutter, blood drinker, and possible cannibal in training, and stabs herself to death in front of you if you refuse her advances. From there, the game quote unquote breaks, and no matter what you do as the player, short of hard quitting out to the game back to the console home screen, can do nothing but stare at her corpse for long minutes. Reloading doesn't help, trying to get to the game's main menu doesn't work, as it is disabled. Anything but being forced to stare at the dead cartoon character, the screen awash in blood, can't be done. Unless you hit the dialogue skip button, then it rushes through the time lapse in the background until the whole framework of the game collapses and you're left with Monica, who, quote unquote, yes, I am saying that a lot on purpose, reveals herself to be a sentient AI, a literal ghost in the machine, who has fallen in love with the player, not the player character, and at this point locks the game into a featureless void where her whole face takes up the screen and she reveals herself that she does not know whether you, the player, are male or female, but will display your gamer tag or screen name just to show you that this is really happening as a fourth wall break. I mean, sorry, not impressed. She might as well put on a gas mask and said, I see you like Castlevania! Like this shit is Metal Gear Solid. A better game overall. By this point, I had really become very bored as long minutes of the game went by, with the Monica character spouting occasional brain droppings about meaningless shit. While I was checking my phone, watching a YouTube video, I left the game running to go feed my cats, and hammering on any button on my controller to get past this shit, and wondering if I should just quit out and go play Dragon's Dogma 2, which I was installing in the background. Eventually, a window opens up where you can get into the game's submenus and you can delete Monica from the game, which works better on PC as this is designed to mimic the INI files most PC software run instead of a console format. And the plot advances the game as it yells at you for being a bad person, but it restarts, seemingly fine. But with all the characters but Monica there. Sayori is alive again, but is now taking on Monica's traits. And it fast forwards to the festival day, where things went wrong. Except this time the game's having a split personality between Monica fighting to reinstall her own program, and the Sayori program fighting to save the player from this AI construct. This is where the choice you made the first ever time you tried to comfort Sayori comes to play for the ending. If you said you were in love with Sayori, Sayori wins. She thanks the player for being a good person and for trying to make friends and destroys Monica, only to have Monica sing the outro song. This is the good ending. If you told Sayori you were just friends, Monica wins, and she destroys everything. And Sayori sings out the intro song in the bad ending. And that's it. Or at least that was as much as I could find doing online research, as I decided no matter what, I was fucking done with this. I couldn't be arsed to try and find any of the romance of the other girls just to see what horrifying deaths I'd missed. And the game just loops back to the original start. In the DDLR Plus update, you can fart around in the submenus, listen to the whole 20-minute soundtrack if you like, and look at fake datasheets and for the game's projections and other shit, and play a side story of how the girls met and interacted before the player arrived. But I'll be honest, I was already bored. The experience I had overall was pretty short, about 4 hours long from start to finish. It didn't need to be longer than that to get its point across, for which I think the right decision was made. This may be the shortest game, outside of NES titles, I've reviewed in a long, long time. Critics of the game are overall positive about it, giving it around an 80 out of 100 on Metacritic. One critic in particular, Stephen T. Wright of PC Gamer, said of the game that it is, quote, a postmodern love letter to the genre it represents, end quote, and likened it to Undertale or Pony Island in its deconstruction of the genre. Mr. Wright, I do believe I hear a sobbing ogre in the background of your office cubicle there. Others, such as Amy Joswit of Rock Paper Shotgun, stated that other visual novels had done fourth wall breaks before, but Doki Doki Literature Club changed that because it allowed the player to destroy game files. Lots of other games have done fourth wall breaks before the visual novel was a thing, right? One critic even had the audacity to leverage the famed Bechdel test, or more correctly, the Bechdel-Wallace test, against the game, stating that a harem anime game failed the test as everything revolves around the male character and the female characters have no agency. Jesus, jumping hot Christ on toast, did you miss the point, whoever the fuck you were? Unusually, and a truly strange bedfellows moment, I find myself agreeing with well-known critic and someone who I have disagreed with regularly, not that he would give a fuck, Ben Yahtzee Croshaw, where he said of the game, it is, quote, a nice little idea with a memorable moment or two, but added, doesn't really have anywhere to go once the rabbit's out of the hat, end quote. I mean, yeah, that's only one of the major problems I have with this title. The developers even stated the game is a satire of the genre of the romance sim or romance anime or manga, and none of it is meant to call out the player, more the absurdity of the genre itself. But that is what I have been hearing about the cultural background of games since 2017. Famous YouTubers, which is a phrase that every time I say it makes me pray more and more for an extinction level meteor strike to hit the earth, latched onto this title more and more, and reviewers and critics of game were breathless in its exaltations and expansions and theories behind the game. A cult of fandom grew up around this game, its characters, and especially the Monica character, in what I can only hope was misguided irony. And the undercurrent was that this was a must-play sort of title. So when it showed up within the past month of the time of this recording on the monthly PlayStation Plus free games option, alongside the Dead Space remake, which shows you how fast EA is trying to disavow any knowledge of that title and make whatever money they can off of it, and WWE 2K24 for, I don't know, Halloween cosplay maybe? The last time I watched professional wrestling, the Ultimate Warrior was still alive and was the champion. I figured I should just grab this must-play psychological horror title that so many people were saying was great, or had deep themes, and had won all those awards and accolades from across the gaming spectrum. And then I played it, and I realized that we, like Ogre, are barely even literate. Here, I'll put this another way, from another deep-cut pop culture reference, and maybe that will become more palatable to you. I've talked about this before somewhere, and if you missed that episode, here it is again. In the 1986 comedy Back to School, Rodney Dangerfield, beloved self-effacing comic, plays a 50-something dad and head of a tailoring empire, where when he was young he dropped out of school and began to use his talent to make the wealthy and powerful of New York City look good in business suits, from mob goons to mayors to senators. Their wealth and power transferred by proxy to him, and he doesn't understand why his son, now college age, wants to even go to school and not just take over the family business. So he follows his son to college to get an experience that he never had. During his time there, Dangerfield runs into a beautiful 40-ish English teacher who is a huge fan of author Kurt Vonnegut and is trying to come on to Dangerfield through the medium of Vonnegut's work. Dangerfield, wanting to impress, and because he has the wealth to do this but not the brains, hires Vonnegut himself. Yes, the author actually does a cameo on this movie as himself, and writes his own paper on the meaning behind his works, and Dangerfield turns it in, thinking he'll get a date out of it. The teacher instead, fails Dangerfield on the paper and kicks him out of her class, screaming, "You know nothing about Vonnegut." And in a throwaway line in the very next scene is seen screaming at Vonnegut's agent over the phone about how he won't pay him for this literary cockblock. So what the fuck does a 1986 little-known comedy and a 2024 Twitter meme have to do with Doki Doki Literature Club? They are both examples of how we, the public, missed the fucking point here in our own self-analysis of the medium, or at least glossed over a major one. You know, listeners, I feel like this game is an example of the public, not the developers, misconceptions. The developers are trying, it seems, to satirize the romance novella and visual novel genres in the most extreme way possible. It would be like hiring satanic black metal outfit Behemoth to provide the sing-along music for your local Girl Scout jamboree. They would either do it ironically or play their own catalog of music. But either way, it would sure as shit make the moms uncomfortable and the edgelords giggle. I don't know from visual novels or romance as a genre, and I mostly couldn't care less, but I suppose they were successful. The things that deeply, deeply bother me about Doki Doki Literature Club are twofold. One, it is the phrasing of the psychological horror. That says to me an atmosphere of unabating tension, confronting deep, dark personal secrets and finding no solution or no resolution to them, living with the discomfort and guilt in a way that disallows from escapism, even through death. This game does not really do that. It still tries to put a candy coating on the rot. The other thing is that is just so many critics and players, especially older ones who should know better, as the younger players missed this title by the fact that it came out on the PlayStation 2 in 2001, were trying so hard to chase that Silent Hill 2 dragon that they pushed their reads of that game onto this title, which has nothing to do with that, at least as I understood the subtext. I've made my thoughts on the other game crystal clear, but I know I'm in the minority. The other thing that deeply bothers me, that I'm sure some have mentioned, but it seems to be out of the high-end critical reviews, where actual money gets traded and counted on the subject matter. That is the S word. The word that will get you demonetized by advertisers on platforms like YouTube and make others nervous. That word is suicide, ladies and gentlemen. And we need to confront that, because it's not helping. If at this point you want to check out, fucking go for it. But rant incoming for those who have the balls to remain. I have long been an advocate for mental health. It is a lifelong condition and it is not, at this time, curable. I've had my own struggles with it. I've been very clear about that. If that has made anyone uncomfortable, I am sorry. But hiding it does not help anyone, yourself included. I've seen the wreckage of what happens afterward to the people whose loved ones commit or complete their suicides, and I know what kind of destruction it leaves. For you tough guys out there listening who think it's not so bad and it's for the weak, I hope someone close to you does it. I'm not shy about calling you motherfuckers out either. But is a subject we all, as a society and people, need to address and reckon with. I will say one thing Doki Doki Literature Club gets right about suicide is that the monologue, it's not really a dialogue as no real ideas or convincing arguments are shared, of the main character trying to talk to Sayori is genuinely inexperienced and of someone who doesn't have a fucking thought in their head beyond their own cock or whatever game they are currently playing. But I'm an adult, and I work in a field where I'm required by law to be mindful of what my students say, as many of them come from the backgrounds that mirror the mental illness of the female characters. And if I even have a suspicion of any of them considering self-harm, I have to basically sit on them, not let them out of my sight, and start screaming for help. Or call anyone. Crisis hotline, 911, police, fire, ambulance, somebody in a professional stance that can get them the help they need and keep them alive immediately. And I've had the training. That's the correct thing to do. But it's not something an untrained kid would think to do, especially when the hot goth chick is on her way over. And there is no way to really deal with the guilt, called survivor's guilt, on your own outside of a professional therapeutic environment, which also obviously does not happen for the main character. And the next hour or so of the game, I could see an argument being made for him displaying a break from reality for post-traumatic stress disorder. But that's not all of what happens. It's an AI construct trying to fuck with the player, not the character, in order to, again, quote unquote, deconstruct the genre. Which, after a subject like that, is a fucking poor attempt at moving the plot along. And the subsequent suicides of any of the other girls is just insult to injury, with no recognition beyond, isn't this weird? Isn't this bad? Wouldn't it be horrible if it was in your face, dude? Well, here's more. I guessed correctly early on that the Monica character was going to be the catalyst or impetus behind whatever horrors the game had coming. So when the double cross came, it wasn't a thing. I wasn't horrified by anything that was happening here. It was more like inevitable outcomes to a heavy-handed and self-righteous narrative. If you are sitting there now and listening, and if you disagree, go ahead. I would like to refer you back to the Ogre comic. As I said, I understood the assignment. I just refused to go along with it or allow the issuer of said assignment to get off the hook without at least a verbal thrashing. And as I said, despite the very dark subject matter, the large-scale narrative glossed that shit right over as not being, I can only guess, advertiser-friendly. I get it. Professionals don't want to jeopardize their bottom lines with words that would make those in charge of their money uncomfortable. Hey, money doesn't care about you, nor who you are, who you represent, or what your cause or crusade is. Money is only for money, and it will pull out if it thinks the public will get upset. And it would seem that Salvato did the same thing here. But under no circumstances should anyone at all ignore, trivialize, exploit for profit, and profit comes in many forms, or use flowery language to downplay pain that leads to and concludes with suicide. And don't you ever, ever try to shut someone up about it either. Otherwise, you are just paying lip service. You are just another worthless keyboard warrior. Look, I get it. Life is not, nor has it ever been, precious. You only need to look at the history of the past 120 years to see how we as a species view the sanctity of life. Species die off, human instigated mass extinction, war, food deserts, large scale reckless industrialization, autocratic regimes and dictatorships, ecological destruction. But I'm not necessarily against the taking of life either. The death penalty will always be part of us as a culture for getting rid of the unrepentant, even though it has been shown time and again that half the folks there are under a miscarriage of justice that has nothing to do with justice, and we just have to reckon with that. And if someone is dying of a painful but terminal illness, I do believe they have the right to die with dignity as a form of euthanization, provided, of course, that they are in their right mind. But that's the rub. We think we're different, special. Nature doesn't. It'll kill us and all the other creatures with equal indifference. We see that every hurricane season. But that's the other damnable thing about suicide. It's a trick. A conceited idea of the brain that makes us think we're special, different, that our pain can never be abated, and marks us for termination. That's what makes it a mental illness, a misclick, a short in the brain. You're not in your right mind to make that choice. As late singer-songwriter David Gold said in his song Traveling Alone, one can be grateful to be alive, but also despise this life. But you still have to be willing to fight to stay alive, despite misgivings. And anyone who says you are weak for having such thoughts is a real piece of shit. The repercussions of ignored, misdiagnosed, or laughed at mental health issues are always destructive. And as a society, we are barely awake to this topic, barely literate to it. And we choose not to correct that mistake regularly. But yes, the girls of the Doki Doki Literature Club don't exist. They are not real and never were. They are characters with no ability to think for themselves. They are merely ciphers for authorial intent and poor parody. It's all the stuff of shadows, smoke, and mirrors. I don't know whether to applaud Team Salvato or to criticize them for not even putting up the half-assed, if you know someone who is thinking about suicide, opening line to the suicide hotline number at the end of the game that might have to be included in larger games by larger studios. I get that there was not the point for that, but it is still a visceral point. It is a catastrophic miss, in my opinion. You may not agree, but that's fine. I don't have to agree with your assessment of this game either. Did the game succeed at making me uncomfortable? No, not at all. As I said, after the cat was out of the bag, I got very bored. Is it a horror game? I guess after the fact. It certainly doesn't shy away from presenting a horrible subject and trying to affect the viewer negatively. But to be honest, I caught myself giggling at the midpoint of the game where the one girl was developing black vacuous holes for eyes, and was rolling my own eyes hard at all the plan glitches and fucked up text walls, written by someone who only had a Google search history acquaintance with the topic of mental illness. Is this a good game? No, not at all. Can I recommend it? No, I cannot. Doki Doki Literature Club is a freeware game that still uses social capital for profit on a very serious subject, and I cannot get behind that. Did it have an effect? I suppose so. It is more a rare event than you may believe, where I have had my turn with a very popular game and I felt I and we came away poorer for the experience. Yet here we are. I less than proudly enter Doki Doki Literature Club into a select fraternity of games that I just cannot agree with the assessment of the large gaming public on, and it will remain as such. Doki Doki Literature Club, at least from my experience and my perspective on the cult around it, is the teacher not understanding Vonnegut when the man himself writes in and tells you what it is. It is the ogre only being able to identify the surface themes unironically, while missing the bigger theme. Maybe you think of me and my review that way, and that's fine. Christ knows I've heard bigger lines of horse shit out of the gaming press in general that everyone lets go past without saying anything. This title sucks for a lot of reasons, surface level and deep. In summary, Doki Doki, go fuck yourself. Thank you for listening. Deleted Saves would like to thank Brad, Keith Gasper, Orden Wells, and Maslama for being patrons of the show. If you would like to become a patron of the show, please go to patreon.com and check out Deleted Saves podcast. All donations go directly towards maintaining the show itself. Thank you.